Welcome back to my channel, GM Sprinkles here with another video. Today we're going to be discussing character creation. Super excited to share this one with you guys. I love this, it's a big passion of mine, so I hope that comes through in this video. Today I'm wearing my shirt from Greece, Delphi in particular. Now this is a decision that I made due to the new book from D&D, the Mythic Odyssey of Theros. So I've got the book here behind me. Look at that beautiful cover. So I thought, why not? It's Greek inspired, so I thought I'd wear my Greek shirt. Alright, before we get on to the topic, I did just want to let you know that this advice can be used for game masters, players, or even writers, and I am using it as general. I will be using examples probably from D&D, Cypher, and my TTRPG experience, but I also will be linking to writers as well, because I do a little bit of writing. When creating a character, you do have to come up with a name. Now this is something that I really struggle, when you may remember from my previous video, that a lot of my characters have very generic names because it's just something I can think of off the top of my head. But it's very important to actually put some effort into this if you can. Just purely and simply is because names can carry weight. So if it's an exotic name, that might mean they are from a far off land. Or if it's your last name, for example, it may carry weight, whether it's nobility or you are related to someone important or famous. And that's very important to a character, no matter whether it's writing or whether it's your game that you've got, your TTRPG game that you've got coming up. Something else that I do find that gets overlooked is where a character is born. Now this may not seem important, but really it kind of is, because depending on where a character is born depends on their personality, their culture, their religion, especially in a fantasy setting. This is usually can be massive difference. So sometimes if they're across one end of the globe, or if they're across to a different country and they've moved, that might mean they don't get along with people from this country, or it may mean their cultures clash. And it's very important to know where a character is born, and on the extension of that, who their parents are, because, you know, we're all molded by our parents when growing up. So if we've got a certain cultured mum and a cultured dad, we might have a mixed cultured background, and that's very important with your characters when creating them as well. Now this may not seem important, but I believe it's really important for a well-rounded character is to have where their parents are from, or who their parents are, and where they're born. So this obviously will change a character, especially in fantasy. I find that, you know, we've got such a wide range of cultures and religions usually, that, you know, if someone's going to be born in one sort of section of the world, they're going to have different culture belief to another. And if your parents are mixed cultured, that's going to give you mixed cultured beliefs usually. And I think that's really important, or what your parents are like as well, because that really shapes us. And just in general, anyone, it really shapes us what our parents and how they bring us up, and what culture they bring us up with. And I find that's really important for a character to know what that kind of culture they were brought up with and how that has impacted their life. Whether you're playing a tabletop game or you're writing a novel, I think it's very important to know what your character was doing prior to this part of the story. So if they're a detective in a novel, were they always a detective? Have they recently moved to a new city and they're doing detective work here? And I think that's really important, and especially with tabletop games, what has led them to this point in their life where they're going on adventures and they're going out of their home. Because usually most people, especially if we're looking at the classic D&D style, most people in that time period aren't going to go out and adventuring and leave their life behind unless there's a really good reason to. Otherwise we'd all just grow up and do what our parents do. That's kind of what happened in those time period. Obviously there's exceptions to those rules and whatever, but I think it's very important to know why your character has left their life behind them, and why they're going on this adventure, or why they're doing what they're doing. And if they have left a life behind, what have they left behind, or who have they left behind? This is very important to a character's backstory. And honestly, players, if you're doing this with your playable character, this is really fun for the GM or DM to have a look here, and they can weave that back into that story. So if you had a wife, or you have some kids that you left behind to do this adventuring life, the DM can bring that back in and cause that story to feel more immersive and real. It has that character drama and just makes it feel way more convincing. We all have drives and all have desires, and I think that's very important to have them in your characters, whether it's an NPC or whether it's a side character or your main character or a playable character at a tabletop game. I think it's very important to have those desires and wants, because without a desire and want, it kind of feels a bit odd and you're not really sure what you're aiming for. And you talk to anybody, they'll have a desire or what they're trying to achieve, and I think that's very important. Especially for your NPCs, GMs, it's so important. Otherwise your shopkeeper just feels like another shopkeeper and doesn't feel very exciting. where, you know, you could have a shopkeeper and he opens his shop so he could support his wife and kids and get his kid through college, and that's really fascinating. Or maybe a shopkeeper is just saving up enough money to buy a ship so he can explore new lands and find somewhere new to sell his wares. And I think that's really fascinating if they have that goal. And on that, I think they should also have flaws. There's nothing worse than a character without flaws, especially for you playable characters. Honestly, it is the worst. I've read too many stories and I have seen too many playable characters without any flaws, and it's so boring. Please give us a flaw, especially if it's something fun and unique. And if your flaw is that they just care too much, that is rubbish. Please, that is not a flaw. That is the worst thing I've ever heard, and it happens way too often. Race, ethnic background, and religion are super important for your characters as well. This goes back to that culture thing that I spoke earlier about, is that, you know, different races, different religions have different cultures. It's important to know those because that's how your character is going to act. So obviously in some religion it's very polite to give gifts when you visit people's houses, and that's maybe a cultural thing, it might be a religious thing, and is that something that your character does? And is that odd to everybody else? And that's very important to think about. Something else that really bothers me when a player comes to the table is if they don't have a religion or they don't believe in a god. I do understand there's obviously little ways around that, but it is ridiculous. In D&D, for example, it is super ridiculous if a player doesn't believe in any gods, yet their friend over there believes in a god of war and he gives them powers to do his cleric abilities, but no, that's not real. It just doesn't make sense, and I get it, you may not believe in a religion, and that's fine. You don't have to believe in the religion, but we're role players, and if we don't believe in a religion but your character can, that's fine. We should be different to our characters. We shouldn't be the same anyway, in my opinion. But please, if you're going to play a D&D game, you're a player, please don't tell me that you don't have a religion. Now this is personally the most important thing for me when creating a character at the table or even in a book. And obviously if it is at a table, the GM and DM might want to tweak a few things just to fit that into their world, and that's okay. Just be prepared that that might happen. Something that I like to do, especially with my NPCs, especially if they're going to be a reoccurring NPC, and I do this with all my characters as well actually, is to give them secrets and something odd that they do. So whether it's something, or a habit, not necessarily odd, maybe they fiddle with their beard, maybe they bite their nails, or they're always chewing something. I just find it's a little bit fun to have that unique weird thing about a character, and it really makes them more memorable as well. And secrets, we all have secrets. Everyone has a secret that they don't want to get out, or information that they know and others don't, and I think it's very important to have characters that know that information, especially for NPCs. DMs and GMs, I can't stress this enough, I really believe that all NPCs should have some kind of information to give the party or the players. Something that I really enjoy doing with my characters, and I read this online somewhere, I don't remember where unfortunately, is to do a Myers-Briggs personality test for your character, especially if it's a main character. I find it really helps get into their head and you can just know more about them. It's a really fun way to do that in my opinion. I will put a link to one of those quizzes below, and you can do that for one of your characters. And actually, if you do that for one of your characters, please put down the below. I'd love to know about your character, I'd love to know what their personality is, and I'd love to hear that as well. So go ahead, put that in the comments. When making this video, I really had to look at the way I create characters and work out what I did to make them convincing. I found this really hard because it's just something that kind of comes naturally because I've been doing it for so long. So I ended up reading through articles and looking at it, and I finally worked out what I do. And that is, you may have heard this, especially in the writers community, is that you have a want versus a need, and every character has a want and a need to make them a believable character. So an example of this is someone might want to remove crime, but to be able to do that, they need to be able to get over their crippling gambling addiction. So they have something that they need to get over to be able to fulfill that goal, as well as actually be able to do that. And it's just one of those things that I do with all my characters, whether it's in a book, or whether it's my character at a game, or just a really important NPC, is that I give them something that they want to achieve, that's very important of course, and a character development moment, so they need to go through some development before they can achieve that goal. So especially for your villains, it makes it really well-rounded villains if you do this, and I highly recommend that. This is a very in-depth way to make a character, and obviously some steps you may feel like aren't necessary, and especially with NPCs, you probably don't need to go through all this effort. I'm going to do a little bit of a summary how to make convincing NPCs in next week's video, So if you would like to see that, please do come back, subscribe, and that way you'll get a notification to come back to my next video. If you do have a character you'd really love to share, put that in the comments. I'd love to read it. Otherwise, if you have any feedback, video suggestions, put that in there as well. Or if you would also like a video more in-depth in character building or more in-depth on want versus need, put that in the comments as well so I can read that, and then we'll see what we can do. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, please like, share, and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. It really helps the channel out. Otherwise, if you did want to follow me elsewhere, you can. I have a Twitter, which is @SprinksDM, and I also have an Instagram, which is GMSprinkles. You can follow me there. On my Twitter, I post random advice, opinions, sometimes RPG hooks, and what I'm doing in my games. On my Instagram, I do post short snippets of my video before they're uploaded, and if that interests you, you can go ahead there. I also do post some art every now and then. I am no artist, so fair warning, but if I'm drawing something for my character, I will post it there as well. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. You have a lovely day.